Alrighty, greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to our Tuesday night live stream for Week 13 of the 2025 fantasy football season. For over the course of the next hour plus, we're talking all things fantasy football, specifically preparing our lineups for this upcoming week. Of course, we have 3 Thursday games with Thanksgiving ahead, a Friday game, and then, of course, a huge slate of Sunday games with no teams on bye, and many of us still looking for some potential waiver wire pickups and trades to make in order to improve our teams and get ourselves one step closer to not only making the playoffs, but effectively trying to win a 2025 fantasy football championship. Hope you guys are having a wonderful Tuesday. Again, earlier today, I did drop my top 36 running back rankings video in regards to the running back position for a half PPR, talking about all things, whether it is matchups or whether it is individual rankings for those players. Again, this week, it's a little bit of a trickier one, right? With such a short week ahead, with 3 teams playing on Thursday, again, we just have to hope that everyone's healthy. I know that, of course, the Green Bay Packers play on Thursday, and for those of you who have Emmanuel Wilson, please don't drop him. Keep him on roster just in case, as if, there's a possibility in which, Jacobs is not available to play on Thursday. You can look in his direction. We're hoping that, of course, Lamar Jackson can at least wake up come Thursday, a quick turnaround to get a bounce back here. Again, we are still wondering whether players like a Bucky Irving, a Trey Benson, now Omarion Hampton, are they going to be active and ready to go by this upcoming Sunday? But we'll keep an eye on that. Again, as we go throughout today's live stream, do not forget that I'm here to answer questions. So whether you do have a question and you want to send it in via the live chat and or super chat in order to claim priority, make sure you include your scoring format. The more that you provide in terms of context, the easier it'll be for myself and other members of the community to help answer your questions. I know this is a little bit of a later live stream than we typically conduct here on the channel as of this season. As of right now, obviously, it's probably, 10 p.m. EST, but we're going to try to go ahead and get this going right now. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up some of the super chat questions that were sent in to begin the day. So let's go ahead and let's begin with James Grover, 9260, who sends in the question as follows. Thank you again, James. 10-team PPR. We've got Neal, Benson, Pacheco, and BTJ all on waivers. Rank best to worst rest of season. Okay, so of the available options you do have, I do believe that Trey Benson is the best available option. I mentioned it earlier today, and I'll go ahead and reiterate based on the stats that I conveyed during my running back rankings video. The Arizona Cardinals, since the absence of Trey Benson from weeks 5 through 12, the overall contributions in terms of opportunity to Arizona Cardinals running backs have been incredibly significant. We're talking about since week 5. The Cardinals have given their running backs 19.3 rushing attempts per game on average and 7.57 targets per game on average. Again, whenever you have an opportunity of being able to eclipse 28 running back opportunities a game, there is so much work available for Benson in the return that for the remainder of the season, now that Jacoby Brissett is leading this team on many of negative scripts, and of course allowing for guys like Bam Knight to be fantasy relevant on a weekly basis, you would assume that Trey Benson at a full capacity with the talent that he possesses should be the clear and away number one. As for your alternatives here, I would probably lean in the direction of considering who you need. If you're in need of a running back, in comparison to a wide receiver for rest of season purposes, I think Neal would be the next best option. Then we go BTJ third and then Pacheco fourth. I think the contributions of what we have seen from Kareem Hunt over the course of the last 4 games has definitely secured him as the clear lead back of this offense. And of course, clearly the starting goal line back to get majority of the touchdown upside as he's been exposed to a touchdown a game for the last 4 weeks. So for now, those are the directions I'd go in. Benson 1, Neal 2, BTJ 3, Pacheco 4. In the event in which you need wide receiver and you need to prioritize that, I guess you can go BTJ over Benson in this question. Thank you. All right, let's hear Ash. Send to the question. Ash, thank you very much. This is a full PPR, double running back, wide receiver, double flex. I'm 7-5. Okay, so 7-5, you're in a pretty good spot. Hopefully going to make the playoffs in this circumstance. Let's see what you have in terms of your roster. It says, I have the first waiver priority. Should I use it this week or wait? My quarterback is Baker and Purdy. My wide receivers are Ladd McConkey, Jamar Chase, Michael Wilson, Juwan Jennings, Chris Godwin, Bijan Robinson, Chase Brown, Marks, Benson are my running backs. Gadsden, Schultz, and Strange are my tight ends. We have kicker Aubrey, Texans, and Seahawks defense. Notable players on the waivers are Dart, Stroud, Lawrence, Neal, Pacheco, Vidal, Hubbard, Monungai, Higgins, Downs, and Cup. Okay. So there are some definitely significant potential options out there for you to pick up. Now, I will say, based on the running backs you have on roster right now, I would probably feel pretty confident in the idea then in a double running back, double flex format, like Bijan Robinson and Chase Brown will start for you weekly rest of season, assuming they maintain health. So those are going to be your 1-2 options there. As for wide receiver, I'm going to assume Ladd McConkey and Jamar Chase, with no bye weeks ahead, are going to start every week for you. So it's just purely a matter of how are we going to fill this flex position, to which when I look at the likes of guys like Woody Marks and Trey Benson, and effectively Michael Wilson, what he's done as of late, same thing with Jawan Jennings, I feel like you could theoretically drop like Schultz or Strange in this case, as we'll be starting Gadsden probably weekly going forward, to which I would be very comfortable going after the likes of someone like a Neal and or potentially Jaden Higgins. Now, to utilize the number one waiver priority in order to accomplish this, I don't think it's a necessity, but I do think it makes your team effectively stronger in the acquisition of these players, and it effectively does make other teams in your league not as viable to compete against you. But are you going to be in a position to where you have to start Neal and Higgins every week? No. Because Marks and Benson, alongside a Michael Wilson and Jennings, can very easily and probably will be ranked higher than those alternatives I just mentioned on the free agent market. They'll probably be ranked higher as well. So ultimately, you'd only be picking them up to just make other people not get those players. That's really just it. I do think that Kamara is probably going to be out for a significant volume of time, if not for the remainder of the season. So the potential of picking up Neal here, I think, is still very much so of value, to which I am interested in it. But in terms of playing him, it's going to be very few and far between. So if you want to hold on to the number one priority, you're more than welcome to in this case, because again, he's never really going to contribute to you as much as we may want. Now, it is not a bad idea to have extra RB depth. You never know. Injuries could occur. But then again, at that point, you can just pivot to the handcuffs to these players effectively. So for now, looking at the roster, again, I don't think it's a necessity. I think you can perfectly hold and then maybe try to scrap up some players after waivers run. So in the case of which after waivers run, if someone of the case of, like, you would be starting Purdy every game rest of season in this case. I don't even mind the idea of going after Dart in this case. Do I want to rip number one weight? Okay, so if, for example, I got to think about this really quickly, because if Baker is going to miss time here, I don't think he's going to miss that much time effectively. I think I just hold. If you ever thought about ripping it for Dart, then I would go after Neal first, then I'd go after Dart second, then Higgins third, and let my number one. Actually, maybe that is the play. Maybe the play is like stashing. Well, you can't stash him just yet. If you drop these two, and then you drop Godwin. So you drop Schultz, Strange, and Godwin. You pick up Neal first, Dart second, Higgins third. I feel like that could be a play. But again, that's very much so under the expectation to which you're trying to start Dart every game rest season, if he's even available. I don't know what they're going to do with him. So for now, I can just hold. Don't have to make any crazy moves. Just hold it, because again, injuries happen every single week. Thank you. All right, let's see here. Michael Gonzalez, 2062, says, hey, Andrew, I know it's early this week, or in the week, but I'm looking for your advice. I need one running back and a flex between Harvey, Judkins, Diggs, and Hampton. Full PPR, thanks for all the help, and happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to you and to everyone here in the live chat, and of course, all of you who support. I greatly appreciate it. In regards to the potential of starts for this week, at running back and flex, I'm for sure going to be playing Harvey at running back, taking on Washington, who have been absolutely torn apart by opposing running backs over the course of the last 2 months of the season here, the last 8 games. So in regards to that potential, Harvey has to play. As for Diggs taking on the New York Giants, I feel like that's an auto start in that circumstance in a full PPR capacity. Hampton, again, he's going to be ramped up over the course of this week. As to whether he's going to even be active, to be determined. So we'll know by Friday. As for Judkins, again, in comparison to Diggs, considering Judkins will be taking on the San Francisco defense, I'm not too confident in Shadur Sanders in that matchup. I think Harvey and Diggs are your best 2 plays this week. Thank you, Michael. Andy Haas sends in a question. Andy, thank you. Says, I got to drop Los Angeles Chargers defense for Houston if I can tonight, right? Yes, absolutely. If you have an opportunity of picking up the Texans defense, I feel like that is absolutely a move that you should be making, especially considering how effective that Houston defense has been week over week. But additionally, on top of that, the schedule they have ahead, like I'll just pull it up again just so we're on the same page. Looking at their fantasy playoffs, they take on Arizona, the Las Vegas Raiders, and the Chargers in Week 17. And do not forget that a couple years ago in the NFL playoffs, I think it was last year, wild card round, What did the Houston Texans do to Justin Herbert? Absolutely shellacked them. So I feel like those 3 games are very much so vital to the potential success. If you've already made the playoffs, I think it is the move to go in the direction of picking up Houston, who are coming off of 3 consecutive games of 10 plus fantasy points and have been the #1 overall defense in fantasy thus far this season. Says, I need a W this week, and I'm thinking Los Angeles Chargers would be good if Genty sits. Yes, I would agree that in the event in which Genty was to miss this week, because the Los Angeles Chargers' biggest weakness is stopping the run, if Genty was to miss this week by chance, then I would agree that a Los Angeles Chargers potential play in comparison to Houston against the Indianapolis Colts would be a little bit more of a preferred positioning. But I'm just purely prioritizing Houston for the fantasy playoffs. But if you need the win this week, then in this case, maybe it is bench pivot is Browns defense versus San Francisco. I would probably keep the Los Angeles Chargers and then probably drop the Browns defense for Houston for rest of season purposes. I will say the Browns defense has been incredible. We've all witnessed it. Their fantasy point contributions over the course of the last 2 months here since week 5, they've put up 9+ fantasy points in 5 of the last 7 incredible games across the board. So with their upcoming schedule ahead, I mean, I don't mind them in week 14 against Tennessee if that's what you're holding them for. If you're in a position, Andy, to where you're like, Andrew, if I don't win the next 2 games, I'm done, then I keep Los Angeles and I play them this week, and I keep the Browns and I play them next week against Tennessee, and I forget about the Houston Texans defense because we're trying to claw into the playoffs. And I would try to drop somebody else off your bench to pick up Houston and stash them. Thank you. All right, continuing on. We had Michael, who sends in a question. Says, pick 3 in a full PPR. We have Chimere DK, Bayshal Tootin, Kyle Monangai, John Mechie, Devin Neal, Colston Loveland, Tank Bigsby, and Emmanuel Wilson. Well, look, this question has a lot of implications in regards to players who may be missing. If we are under the assumption that, of course, Saquon misses and Jacobs miss, this changes the entire equation to which both of these running backs, Bigsby and Emmanuel Wilson, would start most likely alongside of someone like Neal. Those would be the 3 that I would roll with in that case. But assuming both Jacobs and Barkley are healthy and rolling this week, Neal would play alongside of most likely Chimere DK and John Mechie in this circumstance. That's kind of the positioning in which I would go with between those options. Thank you again, Michael. All right, moving on to TPD45. Says, I traded Jefferson for Pittman. Thoughts? I really like that trade, especially if you look at the upcoming schedule for the Indianapolis Colts. I do think that their fantasy playoff schedule is incredibly favorable. Obviously, between now and then, taking on Houston, again, that Lassiter matchup and Stingley matchup, not the greatest. But then they get Jacksonville, Seattle, San Francisco, and Jacksonville. 2 of those 4 matchups against Jacksonville. I mean, again, their secondary has not been great. We have seen many of wide receivers and, of course, quarterbacks torch them. We know that the Seattle Seahawks' biggest weakness is not stopping the run. It's the absolute opposite. Their secondary is their weakness as a defense, and they can be taken advantage of. And then you have San Francisco, who, outside of this most recent game against I don't even know how to explain Carolina last night. Outside of that performance, their secondary has been absolutely torched by opposing receivers. So Michael Pittman is a huge haul in this case, and I would do that 10 times out of 10. Frank Grillo sends in a question. Frank, thank you. Says, if Bucky actually plays, should I start him or wait a week just in case he's limited? Also Prescott or Stafford. Okay, so really quickly, in the case of Bucky Irving, Frank, I think it just depended on what you have as an alternative option and whether or not the value which he would present in terms of an alternative would be similar, if not more valuable than Bucky. Because, again, I know that Bucky Irving's value is going to be very much so attached to whether or not Baker Mayfield is available for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this week. So in the event in which he's out, Bucky's already a lesser play at that, but then it also adds to the fact that he may be limited in his overall deployment. So just a matter of what else you have alternatively to position or pivot to. Once I have an idea of that, that'd be a great idea just to kind of let me know, and then I can kind of give you my thought process on the matter. Now, as for Prescott versus Stafford, I'm under the assumption that, again, when we're talking about Matthew Stafford, who's the best quarterback versus zone coverage this season, is taking on Carolina, who can't score as an offense. And effectively, even if they do, it makes Stafford's that much kind of a safer of a floor because he'll be forced to score that much more. I feel like Stafford, again, like I talked about it earlier this week, in regards to, let me go pull this up right now. I talked about it when I was talking about Colby Parkinson, specifically because of the potential touchdowns that are going around in that offense. Matthew Stafford has thrown 3 or more touchdowns in, 2, 4, 6 of the last 8 games. The rate at which he's able to accomplish this is such a high level to which I have a hard time pivoting away from him. Even in the case in which we have Prescott in a 52.5 point total implicated shootout against Kansas City on Thursday, I feel like Stafford's the play there. Thank you. Luis Lucero sends out a question. Thank you very much, Luis. Should I keep Gadsden and Goddard or pick up a different tight end? I would be very comfortable rolling Gadsden weekly rest of season, genuinely. In the event in which, again, if there are other tight ends out there that shouldn't be available. Now, what I mean by that is in the case in which you have, let me think of a potential tight end who shouldn't be out there. I mean, you know the players, right? We talk about them every week. If somehow, some way, somebody has left Theo Johnson out there, I'd be willing to go pick up Theo Johnson and maybe even part ways with Goddard in order to accomplish that. Because when I look at the upcoming schedule for this upcoming, slated games for Philly, do I feel the most confident in regards to the overall utilization of Goddard? No. He's super touchdown dependent. Their offense is kind of in a really bad spot of late. So if someone like that is available, I'd be okay kind of pivoting there. In a full PPR, I think Dalton Schultz is somebody that I'd like to pivot to as well, because as of late has been kind of a really solid piece there. I'd even be willing to pivot to potentially Brenton Strange there. So in the case in which any of those are possibilities, I don't mind making that move. I mean, we're talking about Goddard, who outside of taking on Buffalo this most recent week, who are by far and away the most toughest matchup at the tight end position, had gone 5 of the last 6 games prior to Buffalo with 11 or more fantasy points. Like that should be already positioned ahead of someone like Goddard, if available. Thank you, Luis. Sharangon 9101 says, hey, Andrew, questions in the chat. Appreciate the help. Thank you, man. Waiver suggestion question. Everyone from your video is available. Nix and Caleb are available too. I'm 7-5 in a 10-team PPR double wide receiver double flex format with Purdy, Henry, Travion Judkins, RJ, Alvin Kamara, and Algier. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Lad McConkey, Nico, Rome, Kelsey, and my Cleveland defense. Okay, so of the availables you have, you've got a lot of players here. And I'm kind of considering the following approach. I feel like, based on what you have at running back, I'd genuinely be willing to drop Alvin Kamara and Algier right now in order to try to go pick up another quarterback and then additionally on top of that, another defense. That's kind of what I want to do, because I don't think that picking up Devin Neal is going to immediately help you. You're going to play Derrick Henry, Travion Henderson, and either Harvey or Judkins rest of season every single game. The rookie running backs here have been great, and they're going to continue to be great. So I'd keep it as such. Amon-Ra, Lad, Nico, Rome. There's no difference. You're just going to always roll with those options. Kelsey's been great this season, and I do believe I want to keep Cleveland for the Week 14 matchup against Tennessee, because that'll secure you a playoff berth. But if you can go and potentially pick up the likes of Bo Nix and play him against Washington this week over Purdy, I think that's a really solid option, and I'd be willing to go ahead and explore and accomplish that. So in the event in which you can pick up Nix, and then when we look at potential defensive pickups for this week, let me go ahead and let me pull up my list from yesterday's video. I mentioned teams like, I guess it depends, right? Because if teams, for example, like I mentioned, there's a couple teams there on defense that, like, if they were already rostered, because they had a high roster percentage, maybe they're not available to you. But if in the event, if a team like, for example, okay, let's just throw these out there. If Jacksonville is available against Tennessee, we'd like to play them there. If Miami's available against New Orleans, we'd like to play them there. If someone dropped Denver's defense this week because they went on bye, I'd like to play them this week. Who's another? I like to pick up the Falcons defense and play them against the Jets. The Chargers defense against the Raiders. If any of those are available, I go pick them up and play them instead of the Cleveland Browns this week, and I'd position myself to play Cleveland the next week. So Alvin Kamara, Algier are the casualties here, and picking up Knicks and a defense would be the plays. Thank you. All right, Ray123 sends it a question. Ray, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate that, sir. Says, I need to win the last 2 games. My running back chart is Henderson, Stevenson, Charbonnet. Walker, Henderson, and Stevenson are okay. So wait, so that's just, you got 4 of them. So you have the 2 New England backs and the 2 Seattle backs. You're saying that Henderson and Stevenson are on bye in 2 weeks. Yeah. So basically week 14, they'll be on bye. I was offered Hunt/Harvey for Henderson/Charbonnet. Should I take it? Ooh, okay. This is an interesting predicament. Okay, so my immediate question before we even answer your question is, do we have an opportunity to go out and pick up Devin Neal off of the waivers? Is there a possibility to accomplish that? If that is potentially possible, then I don't make this trade. Because I don't want to give away Henderson and Charbonnet, who are effectively my two most valuable running backs in this backfield. So if you can go pick up in Devin Neal and roll him next week alongside of Charbonnet and Walker, I would do so. Otherwise, I do feel a little bit sketched out about the potential of moving Henderson and Charbonnet, who I so greatly prefer over Hunt and Harvey rest of season, because of the schedule for Henderson in the fantasy playoffs, excuse me, looking as such. When they get to take on Buffalo, who can't stop the run, and then we have a potential shootout against Baltimore to decide the AFC, and then you get the New York Jets in championship weekend, like I feel like that slate is just so dynamic that I would just love to keep them there. And especially considering you need to win the next two games, I feel like Henderson's contributions this week against the Giants could be nuclear based on what running backs have done to them of late. So ultimately, I think you should try to prioritize the waivers. And then if that's not a possibility, technically speaking, if you can try to get Harvey off his hands, but do it in a different way, that's great. Give them Charbonnet, ask for Harvey, 1-for-1. Otherwise, I don't want Hunt right now for Hendo. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. That's my thought process on the matter, Ray. As to how I'd go about it. Thank you. We could talk about it more as soon as I answer a couple more of these questions. But yeah, for right now, without any other additional context regarding Devin Neal, I'm kind of very hesitant on making this trade. But if I did know the potential of Neal's rostership and whether you can get him, I think that could sway my decision. Siobhan Walker sends in a question, says, Big Dog, with Cooks being signed to the Bills, would you drop Trey Tucker for him? No, absolutely not. Brandon Cooks shouldn't be signed to the Bills. This is the exact same thing in which happened last season. The Buffalo Bills GM and organization have an issue paying wide receivers for some reason. So they've gone ahead and surrounded Josh Allen with, quite frankly, mediocre talent at wide receiver. No one believes that the Bills wide receiver, like if you were to rank the Bills wide receiver room 1 through 32, I feel like they're at the bottom of the conversation if it wasn't for Khalil Shakir. Like legitimately next to the Tennessee Titans in terms of one of the worst wide receiver rooms in the NFL. Like it is like, I would say that probably in the absence of Garrett Wilson, the Jets are the worst. Then it's like Tennessee, then it's Buffalo. Like I don't know if there's a legitimate other worst wide receiver core. Maybe the Saints, where Brandon Cooks came from, as of right now. So again, they're in the bottom of that conversation. I don't believe that Brandon Cooks at this point in his career is going to arrive and make some sort of damage in fantasy in comparison to someone like Trey Tucker, who is already actively getting work. So for now, I think truly just Brandon Cooks was a depth play for them. Just for the GM to kind of be like, look, I'm making moves. Look at me. Yeah, great job. You've absolutely just stunted the growth of this team. So yeah, I'm not thinking it's worth it. It's just like Amari Cooper last year. It's just not really going to make much of a difference. And then your next question is Saints or Arizona defense? Depends. If in fact we get the confirmation, well, I don't really even want to play the Saints. I'd rather play Arizona, but it depended on whether or not we get the confirmation of Baker Mayfield being out. It says, thanks for the help. I've been in 10th. I went from 10th to 3rd. And on a 4-game winning streak, do we trust Burrow? I trust Burrow. Personally, I do. I think it's going to be a shootout. Second highest implicated scoring game of the week. Should be an exciting one. All right, Yeet World sends it a question. It says, standard scoring, 3 points passing touchdown, 6-point rushing. Who are you playing? Dak on a short week versus Kansas City. Dart/Winston on Monday night versus the Patriots. It's a really interesting question. In a league in which you can only get 3 points per passing touchdown, I feel like the potential which Jackson Dart puts forth with his rushing ability, in the event in which we are able to potentially play him, I would go ahead and roll with him. Because again, Jackson Dart has scored effectively, 2, 4, 6, 7 rushing touchdowns in 7 starts of his NFL career. To which effectively he is just more valuable because additionally on top of that, besides the 7 rushing touchdowns in 7 games, he's additionally also had 55 plus rushing yards in 5 of the last 7 games. So just off of rushing statistics alone, he is getting you 11 points base. While someone like Dak Prescott within the passing category would have to really light it up to be able to compete there. I know Dak ran in a touchdown this most recent week, but those are very infrequent. I try to play genuinely Jackson Dart, but because of the unknown of his current whereabouts and whether or not he's going to be available to us, unless I hear anything by tomorrow, I mean, I don't even mind rolling Winston on Monday, genuinely. So I think I just position it is safer to roll with Dak, but I think I'd be willing to take the risk. All right, Fantasy Football 44 sends in a question. Thank you. Says, I'm in a must-win to keep my playoff hopes alive. Start Dak Prescott or Justin Herbert this week. If Baker is out, do I play Bucky Irving still or play Parker Washington, Chris Rodriguez, or Alec Pierce? Okay, these are really good questions. So let me start with the latter half of this question. In regards to the Bucky Irving play, even in the event in which Baker Mayfield is out, I do feel more comfortable playing a Bucky Irving in comparison to someone like a Chris Rodriguez Jr. I think there is a conversation in a full PPR to play Parker Washington there this week. In the event in which, again, you're playing against Tennessee, it's already an advantageous matchup. I think that's a very potentially viable position, assuming BTJ is out. So in the event in which there's a possibility in which Baker's out, Bucky's a lesser play, I do pivot to Washington in a full PPR. Half PPR, I just stick with Bucky there. As for your previously asked question, am I playing Justin Herbert versus the Raiders or Dak Prescott versus the Chiefs? I think I'm going to lean towards Justin Herbert coming off of the bye week against a division rival they're very familiar with and should be able to torch them. Stick with the Falcons defense this week or go with Miami? I would probably prefer to roll with Miami's defense, but I think both are very much so viable. Thank you. G Medina 3717 says questions in the chat, Andrew. Thank you, G Medina. Says I'm in a half PPR going up against Chase, and my wide receiver 2 was T. Higgins, and I need to fill in. I have Jennings and Pierce. On waivers, we have Watson, Dobbs, DK, Yoshi Voss, and Slayton. Thanks. Okay. So I don't love the idea of playing Alec Pierce against that Houston Texans secondary. I think the idea of playing Juwan Jennings in this case is probably the most advantageous. I think there is the discussion to be had regarding Christian Watson or Romeo Dobbs as well because of the ineffectiveness of that secondary, considering all the injuries the Detroit Lions secondary has been able to be impacted with. So as of this moment, I'm thinking to myself, do I position myself to play a Green Bay Packer receiver? I got to think about that one. In comparison to Juwan Jennings, is it even worth it at that point? I think at this point, I'll just stick with Jennings. I think there is a conversation to be had regarding Dobbs, but he's already dealing with a bit of an injury himself. I don't know. After I do my research later tonight, I'll have an idea as to what we're looking at in terms of the potential of these two prospects, Christian Watson or Dobbs. I feel like there is a viability in rolling either of them. But if I was going to roll one of them, I have to roll Christian Watson. I don't think I can justify playing Romeo Dobbs there. DK is okay, but it depends on if Iro Manor and Calvin Ridley are going to be out. So as of right now, I think I'm going to say it's either Watson or Jennings. If you can go ahead and pick up Watson and put T. Higgins in your IR spot in order to just kind of decide before Thursday based on tomorrow's rankings, after I've done my full research, then at that point we can decide between Jennings and Watson. Thank you, G. Appreciate it. All right, continuing on. We had a question from the entrepreneur who says, 10-team PPR. We have Allen, Christian McCaffrey, Javonte Williams, Puka Nacua, Juwan Jennings. We've got, Juwan Johnson, okay? Henderson, J-Mo, Franklin, Godwin, Garrett Wilson, Hampton, Benson, Hurting at wide receiver 2 and tight end. Thoughts? Trade deadline is tomorrow. Okay, so in this current circumstance, if I was looking to potentially make a trade, I think it would be very much so dependent on a couple factors. If you're looking to try to upgrade your tight end, which is Juwan Johnson at the moment, it's really going to be a matter of like which teams in your league would be willing to take Juwan Johnson in a trade 1-for-1. I think you're probably better off, not 1-for-1, but at least 2-for-1. Like if you had the opportunity to move Troy Franklin and Juwan Johnson and get a tight end in return, like a Gadsden, I would do so. But in the event in which you're not capable of being able to accomplish such a thing prior to the deadline, to where you're pairing up a wide receiver and sending Juwan Johnson alongside of them in order to go make an upgrade at tight end, if that's not a possibility, then I'm looking to just go pick up like a Darren Waller, slash him in my IR, or theoretically go and just pick up Brenton Strange. Otherwise, I think the overall contributions and what Johnson's is putting forth in a full PPR is justifiable enough to keep him rolling. He's been 10 plus fantasy points each of the last 3 games, and in the absence of Rashid Shaheed, should continue to be looked like as a top 16 option. So I'm not too worried about your tight end position. Wide receiver 2 is going to be JMO for me every game rest season. Shouldn't be Jennings there. I know JMO's coming off a 0-point game, but those are very, very much so outlier performances in the grand scheme. I don't think there's a necessity to have to make a move. Unless there's someone in your league who, in the potential absence of losing guys that are going on bye week next week, are going to be in jeopardy of losing their season, and you've already secured a fantasy playoff kind of berth, I think there's a possibility in which you could look in the direction of trading for those kind of players. What I mean specifically is, if there's anybody in your league that has a Patriot, a Giant, a 49er, or a Panther who are going on bye next week, and the absence of that player is going to force them to miss the playoffs, I would go knocking on those doors and say, hey, well, you've got Rico Dowdle here, and I've got X, Y, or Z bench player you want to trade just so you have some potential depth in that given week, etc. So if there's a possibility of going after a Diggs, a Rico, a Tedero McMillan, a Wan'Dale Robinson, those are potentially guys that I would like to go after there. Thank you. All right, let's see here. Andrew Mitchell sends it a question. Says, speaking of Bucky, him, Brees, or Diggs, standard league. As of right now, I'd stick with Brees Hall in this circumstance. Taking on Atlanta, which is the 7th best running back matchup, is as advantageous as it possibly can get. As well as the Jets were able to compete in the first half against the Baltimore Ravens, I would assume that they should be able to handle themselves pretty appropriately against this upcoming matchup versus the Falcons. Thank you. All right, let's see here. Ali, 1800, says in a full PPR, Gesicki, Taysom Hill, Theo Johnson, Kyle Pitts, Schultz, or Strange. Okay, so really quickly, I could never justify playing Taysom Hill. I can never justify anymore playing Pitts. I think Gesicki is far too much of a risk. So then it becomes a matter of Theo Johnson, Dalton Schultz, and then Brenton Strange. Now, in regards to the potential of their 3 effective matchups here, let's go ahead and let's pull these. So in specific, right, when we have Schultz versus the Colts, which again, the Colts are one of the most advantageous matchups you can ask for at the tight end position. And then we effectively have Brenton Strange versus Tennessee. They have been decent, but not the greatest overall position. And then you have Theo Johnson taking on the Patriots, who have been solid, but it's very much so quarterback dependent there. For me personally, I'd end up playing Schultz in a full PPR this week out of that group. Thank you. Again, I'll continue to expound upon that as the week progresses. Unfortunately, because there's going to be 3 games on Thursday, I won't have a quarterback or tight end rankings video put out on Thursday because I'll be spending the morning, of course, live streaming and then the rest of the day with the family. But for now, yeah, I will say the Schultz is probably going to be the highest ranked on Thursday morning. I'll be live streaming again on Thursday morning from 7 to 10 a.m. So if you guys have any questions, the rankings will be on screen throughout those 3 hours. So Schultz will be ranked appropriately. Thank you. SBox 180 says drop Wilson and waiver for Neil. Drop Wilson and I mean, which Wilson are we talking about? Are we talking about Michael Wilson? Are we talking about Emmanuel Wilson? I think these are very much so vital conversations to have because in the event in which it is Emmanuel Wilson, there's a chance in which Josh Jacobs could miss this week and make, Emmanuel Wilson an auto top 12 RB start once again. We've talked about it last week in terms of the potential of his production in the absence of, a Jacobs. He's just been great. But not only that, in games in which he has been given 10 or more touches, the guy has been able to put up 10 or more fantasy points in like 6 of the last 7 games. So it's just far too much opportunity for Emmanuel Wilson to be dropped here. I understand that Neil is the greater rest of season value, but if you're a Josh Jacobs manager, I just don't know why you would drop the handcuff just in case. In the case of where this is Michael Wilson, that could be justifiable. Again, Wilson's been incredible of late, but Marvin Harrison will eventually come back. And in the case in which you need an RB, I feel like that could justify. Emmanuel Wilson, that is. Okay. If you have Josh Jacobs, I don't make the move. If you don't have Josh Jacobs and you're just looking for rest of season help because you're trying to prepare for the fantasy playoffs, then you make the move. Thank you. Blazin sends in a question. Says questions in the chat. Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you very much. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you. Says that my team is Lamar Burrow, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Roma Dunze, Shakir Worthy, Bucky, ETN, K9, Tracy, Harvey, Tootin, Brian Robinson, Tyler Warren. Texas, I'm assuming that's Texans defense. You have Fair Baron. Need a win out. My lineup locks have been disappearing. Best lineup this week. Okay, so as of right now, Yeah, your lineup block of like Lamar Jackson, who's a set it and forget it player, has kind of just left you out in the dust. But I feel like you have to play Lamar. Like it's just like Burrow coming off of this whole hiatus against. I mean, I feel like Lamar against Cincy's just an auto start. I don't know if I could justify playing Burrow over him. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb has to start a wide receiver as your wide receiver one. Justin Jefferson and Rome Odunze are very difficult to kind of in between the two of them figure out which way we're going. But for now, I'd probably feel a little bit more comfortable going with Rome Odunze in this case. As for your alternative options in terms of running back, you have Bucky, ETN, K9, Tracy, Harvey, Tootin, Brian Robinson. Of those available, ETN, Harvey are my 1-2 combo. Tyler Warren's my tight end. And if I need a flex, I'm probably going in the direction of Bucky Irving there, to which then I'd pair that up with the Texans and Fairbairn, and we're keeping it moving. In the case in which you're playing in a double flex format, maybe I consider playing Justin Jefferson as that second flex. Otherwise, it's probably Kenneth Walker. Thank you. All right, let's see here. Rogo, what's up? Says, what's up, bro? Got quarterback issues. Got JD and Bryce Young. Get Winston. Yeah, I mean, at this point, you have to. I think, but this is the issue, right? Like, there's a possibility in which Winston doesn't play this week, to which at that point, if Jackson Dart is back, you would then need to go in the direction of Mariota and pairing him up with JD. So, if anything, I'd pick up Winston, and I'd try to get rid of Bryce Young, and then also try to, leave JD on the IR and pick up Mariota effectively to have that alternative option if need be. I don't really like Mariota against, Denver either, but I mean, if that's your best case scenario, then that's what you go with. Random Challenger sends it a question, says, pop quiz. Player with annual spike game this week. Player with annual spike game this week. So you're saying there's okay. I need more clarification because I like this game if this is an actual game. So are you saying there is a specific player that every year week 13 has a spike game in week 13? Or are you telling me to guess who's going to have the spike week? If you can give me a little bit more context to the question, that'd be greatly appreciated. I'm more than happy to expound upon it. Thank you. Ray sends in a question, says, should I trade Bijan for Bucky and AJ Brown/Collins? Main receivers are Ibuka and Olave. Running backs are Bijan, Woody, Chase, Tucker. Trade Bijan for Jamar. Okay, hold up. Looking at your wide receiver depth, I do feel like if you're playing in a league where you're in a 2-2-1 format, so 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and 1 flex, I do feel as if, though, when you have Bijan, Woody, Marks, Chase Brown, and Tucker. So in the case in which you were to theoretically trade for Bucky Irving for the fantasy playoffs, I really like that potential alongside of someone like Nico Collins there. I mean, let me look at Collins' schedule for the fantasy playoffs comparatively to AJ Brown here. So Nico has Arizona, Las Vegas, Los Angeles Chargers. I'm not too worried about that. Looking at AJ Brown's fantasy playoff schedule, he's got Las Vegas, Washington, and Buffalo. I'm not even worried about that either. So ultimately, I'd be pretty happy with either of the two. I feel like as of right now, I have more excitement regarding the Nico potential here. So I don't mind going like Bucky and Nico. If you wanted to take AJ Brown, that works. But I think this is a very fair trade. And I do believe that if you've already secured a playoff position, being able to theoretically start like, especially with Ibuka and the potential shoulder issue of Baker Mayfield, if you can get another wide receiver like an AJ Brown or Nico Collins and pair it up with Olave, then start Bucky Irving, Chase Brown, and then effectively Woody Marks in your flex until Ibuka and Baker are back, I feel like it's worth it. I also feel like Bijan for Jamar is worth it as well. Because you have the RB depth which you can justify, I think that's also a viable move, but I think the depth play of getting 2 players here is actually the more viable. Thank you. Sharangon says, week 13 defense, do I pick up Los Angeles Rams, Miami Dolphins, Los Angeles Chargers, or Denver? I think all of them are incredible plays, genuinely. I feel like the Rams have just been on an absolute tearing streak of killing teams. So as of the moment, I'd probably lean towards picking up and playing the Rams or Denver. It's one of the two. I like both their matchups, but personally, I prefer the Rams against Bryce Young and the mess that is that offense. Ray123 says, my RB waiver options are Benson or Neal. Then Benson is probably the answer here. So going back to your original question here, I think if you can get either of these two running backs, it is justifiably the right decision to not make this trade and to keep Henderson, Stevenson, Charbonnet, and Walker and try to pick up both Benson and Neal. As of right now, I would prioritize Benson in this case, as I do believe he is the more valuable running back. But considering you need wins now, you may just go for Neal because Benson's status as of this week is still up in the air. But again, you're not going to need him this week. So technically, I do like Benson here. Looking at his upcoming schedule, excuse me, sorry for coughing in the mic. Looking at the upcoming schedule of Trey Benson, week 14 against the LA Rams. Oh, God, I don't like that. Let me look at the upcoming schedule for Devin Neal versus Tampa Bay at Tampa. I don't like that either. I think I'd rather have Benson. So in this case, yeah, if I had the opportunity, I try to pick up Benson number 1, Neal number 2, and I wouldn't make this trade. Thank you. Try to get one of the two. If you're able to get one of the two, it justifies not having to make the trade. If in fact the opportunity of picking them up tonight does not go through and you're not able to get either of those two to equivocally happen, I still don't make the trade, and I probably just roll Charbonnet and Walker in week 14. If you think it's super desperate and you think you have to make this trade, then sure, you make it, but I don't love it. Mr. Hockey, what's up? Says, happy Thanksgiving. Are we worried about Jacobs this week with the limited practice? Also, I think limited practices, again, what we've learned year over year is that limited practices are incredibly common, especially on a short week going into a Thursday game after a Sunday, recent game. So in the case of him, obviously they want to make sure he's healthy going into the upcoming Thursday game, having not played in week 12. So I'm not too worried about the limited practice participation of his case. It says also, when will we get quarterback and tight end rankings? You'll get it on Sunday morning. You'll get it on Thursday and Sunday morning. So on Thursday morning, I'm live streaming here on the channel, 7 to 10 a.m. Like I do on Sunday mornings, I have the rankings on screen, as you guys are familiar with, right? So in this case, I will have the rankings on screen for the Thursday live stream because there are 3 games in that day and a Friday game. So I'll have those rankings for quarterbacks and tight ends on screen. I won't be able to go ahead and put out a video because, again, it's a really tough week considering how many games there are in such a short period of time. So in the case of being able to get those rankings, it'll just be via the live stream on Thursday and Sunday morning. Thank you. Let's see here. Andrew Mitchell says, half PPR, drop Tootin, Ramondre for Jaden Higgins. Drop Tootin, Ramondre for... I would be willing to drop Ramondre in order to accomplish that. Pierce, DK, wide receiver 2 now. Yeah, that's fine. Higgins is great in order to drop a Ramondre to accomplish that. Thank you. Merked says, 2 leagues, separate questions. Question number 1, keep 3 for rest of season in a PPR. Sean Tucker, Emmanuel Wilson, Alvin Kamara, David Montgomery. If I'm keeping 3 of these options, it's probably Wilson, Kamara, and David Montgomery. I'm dropping Sean Tucker. Now, that is 100% contingent on the health of Kamara, which I am not aware of his status. In the event in which I get any word regarding his status being at a negative capacity to where he may not return, looking at the most recent report, it says, Kamara, as of 4 hours ago via RotoWire, suffered a sprained MCL on Sunday's loss versus the Falcons, according to Nick Underhill of the New Orleans Saints Football Report. While Underhill reports that Kamara's avoided a major injury, a sprained MCL typically comes to a multiple-week recovery timeline. Kamara just played 11 offensive snaps against... So let's say, for example, he's going to miss like 2 games. He'd theoretically be back by week 15, which I'd like to keep him by then. So for now, in this case, I'd like to keep Kamara. Sean Tucker's the man that gets axed in this circumstance. Thank you. Next question, drop Baker, Warren, Kenneth Walker to pick up the Texans defense for the playoffs, 1 quarterback league. My only question becomes a matter of like, who is your other quarterback if you were to drop Baker? Because I would be willing to do this, because I don't want to drop Jalen Warren and I don't want to drop Kenneth Walker. So in the event in which I can drop Baker and I do have another effective quarterback to be able to contribute henceforth, I think that is the correct way to approach. Thank you. All right. Led sends in a question. Says, hey, Andrew, questions in the chat for one of my leagues. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Says, in a 12-team full PPR team, starters are May, Hunt, Bijan, Egbuka, Ladd, Bowers, Sutton. Bench is Daniel Jones, Kyle Monungai, David Montgomery, Ricky Pearsall, and Trey Benson. Who starts this week and moves for rest of season? Troy Franklin, Pacheco, and Strange are on the wire. I do believe that in your case, I think it's a little bit... I do think there is incentive in dropping Montgomery and picking up a Troy Franklin in this case. I don't think I would ever start Strange over Bowers. So Bowers is going to stick there every single week. But in terms of the potential of maybe even like competing with Sutton here, Troy Franklin has just been so incredible of late that I think he needs to be rostered. In the case in which he would theoretically start for you, again, I think there's a conversation to be had to where you would start him over Sutton. Outside of that kind of a move, in terms of potential rest of season this week, obviously you're playing Drake May, Kareem Hunt, Bijan, Agbuka, and then maybe we play Troy Franklin in that flex position. That's really the only thing in which I would make a move. Otherwise, eventually Benson will be the guy that probably takes over that spot for Kareem Hunt if he's not able to haul it for the upcoming weeks here ahead. Outside of that, I think Troy Franklin is the most valuable pickup here, and I would be willing to drop Montgomery to accomplish that. If you're not as willing or as keen or willing to accomplish it in that regard, again, then you keep it as is and keep it rolling. Thank you. VW Beetle says, who should I start for the rest of season as my flex? T-Mac, Rome, Benson, or Tracy? 100% contingent on a couple of factors. When is Benson healthy? Is the offense going to be just lackluster? What's the deal with Tracy? Who's starting at quarterback? As of right now, in the flex rest of season, if I was going to blindly suggest one player rest of the way, I think there is a legitimate conversation that Benson is the answer. I don't love the schedule. Taking on the Rams, Texans, Falcons, and Bengals. Again, that Rams-Texans matchup, not great. But Atlanta and then Cincinnati, week 16, 17. I feel like Benson might be the answer in this case. Otherwise, next best option is technically Rome. Blazin sends in a follow-up questions in the chat. Says, thoughts on Michael Wilson rest of season? Also, would you trade Tracy for Wilson? Do you feel I need him given the roster? Looking at the roster as a whole, here's my thought process about Michael Wilson. I do believe that he is going to be a less of a prioritized receiver going forward. I know the offensive coordinator specifically came out and said that even with Marvin Harrison returning soon, Michael Wilson will get a lot more first looks going into the upcoming progressions of the upcoming weeks. So it is promising for his value, but he's certainly not going to be 10 plus targets a week rest of season. So his value will diminish, and being able to get someone of the caliber of, trading for him and giving away Tracy, in this case, I don't know if it's a necessity. Looking at the roster as a whole, having Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Rome Odunze, Shakir, Worthy, I don't think it's a necessity to make this trade. Only in the event of which Marvin Harrison was out for the rest of the year would I ever consider a move of that caliber. Otherwise, I think it's appropriate to keep what you have. All right, let me go back up here to Random Challenger, who said, guess the player who will have the spike week. Thank you very much. I appreciate the clarification. Okay, so if we're looking across the board, this week, who's going to have the spike performance to win it all, or kind of like really just dominate? Let's think about this. I'm actually okay, let me just, for reference, maybe I'll start with running back. If I look at my top 36 running back rankings from earlier today, if I was theoretically going to point at a player that's, okay, yeah, this player is going to have that omega spike performance, I think it's RJ Harvey. Like, genuinely. I think that's the guy this week that has that absolutely undeniable 20-point game. That if I was going to just throw it out there, that's the guy. Outside of him, no, I think that's basically it. I don't really need to go about it anywhere else. I think RJ Harvey's the guy to which I believe this week against Washington, he goes absolutely nuclear against them. I know that Jaleel McLaughlin stole the touchdown last week, but if you guys remember how this offense has functioned all year long, there has been weeks in which Dobbins had his touchdown stolen from the backup. And now that Harvey is is the Dobbins of this offense going forward, I do believe that there is a lot of value to be had with Harvey, especially when you're taking on a defense that's recently allowed over 100 rushing yards and a touchdown on the ground to each of the last 4 opponents they have played, allowing 5.3 yards per carry to opposing running backs since week 5. Washington's defense is in shambles, and Harvey would be theoretically the guy which I'd go in the direction of. So that's who I think is going to have that omega spike week here. Now, if you're looking for a potential even deeper sleeper option there, theoretically at RB, who could theoretically have an even crazier potential spike performance this week? Let me check something real quick. I'm actually curious. I think there's a conversation. Just off of rankings alone, I feel like Breece Hall has a pretty big game here. If anybody else was going to have a crazy big performance at running back, looking across the board here, Yeah, I think that's it. Everybody else is already a stud, so I don't really need to put it out there. All right, let's see here. Rogo says drop Shahid or Pacheco RB5 to bring in Benson. Yeah, I would be willing to drop either. As of right now, I think I'd be a little bit more comfortable dropping Shahid because Pacheco is still in the rotation potentially, and I kind of want to see how he's deployed on Thursday. So I think Shahid ends up taking the drop there. I'd pick up Benson. Thank you. Kaizen 671 says start RJ Harvey or Tedero McMillan. I mean, genuinely, I'd play Harvey. The offense for the Panthers regressed back to where they were, and I've lost my hope. They gave me hope. They gave me a glimpse. They gave me a taste of what the potential of Tedero McMillan could be, and then they took it away from us. So, effectively, we'll continue on, just hoping for the best. But for now, I'm rolling with Harvey. Thank you. Half PPR, do I start Devin Neal over Judkins? I probably wouldn't. I think I'd rather just play Judkins in this moment. Hopefully Barkley this week, nuclear. I mean, brother, if it's from your mouth to the fantasy god's ears, please, can Barkley wake up? Please. That would be incredible. But again, it's been a rough season thus far. So I'm not going to expect too much from his potential. All right, I'm in the live chat. If you guys have any questions and you may have been just potentially kind of lurking, I'm here to answer them. So you can go ahead and type it in the live chat now, and I'll try to get to them. All right, Joseph Mai. Half PPR, 2 teams. Who to drop for Neal? 2 flex, Sutton. Oh, sorry, that's Tootin, Stevenson, Algier, Knight. Okay, Waller, Pollard, and Pacheco are on waivers too. Okay, so I'm not really too interested in any of Waller, Pollard, and Pacheco. In the case of which I would drop a potential running back here, I think I would be more inclined to potentially drop Bam Knight because of Trey Benson's expected return. So that'd probably be the way in which I go about it. As for your next question, 1 flex, Emmanuel Wilson, Kyle Monangai, Algier, Rodriguez, Strange, and Waller on the waivers as well. Again, very much so dependent. Like if you were theoretically going to pick up Neal in this league as well, I would be saying that most likely I'm dropping Algier because I don't know the status of Emmanuel Wilson this week with Jacobs, and I would probably just drop Algier to pick up Neal in this case. I would probably also consider the Algier drop in this first league, but I do think that Bam Knight is technically the lesser option of the group. Thank you. Trade away Kyron plus Troy Franklin for Derrick Henry PPR. I'd be willing to make that trade. That works for me, especially with Derrick Henry having this week against Cincinnati and then week 15 against Cincinnati again. I feel like that matchup itself pretty much pays for the value which you are giving away and getting in return here. Bartholomew. Constantino says, what's up, brother? Traded Bucky and Charbonnet for Pickens. Also made a 4-for-1 in another league to get Jameer. I'll share it later. Okay, sounds good. Full PPR, Neal or Hunt? As of right now, I'm leaning towards Kareem Hunt. Again, I do believe that the overall contributions that he has been granted coming off of a game of 33 touches leads me to believe that he is still, in a way, the priority of the two. Nexty, what's up? Says, would you drop Alec Pierce for Neal in a full PPR? I think I need more clarity and context as to the rest of your roster here. If you can go ahead and type in the live chat here, Nexty, who the other wide receivers you have on roster are and who the other running backs are, I can kind of get an idea as to where we're going to approach in terms of starter sits for the remainder of the season, so I can make a little bit more of an informed decision on my suggestion. Thank you. Anonymous, what's up? Half PPR, Woody, Franklin, or Dobbs? Also, Gaston or Andrews? I'd feel that Andrews has to play. Again, when you're playing against the Cincinnati Bengals, guys, everybody at the tight end position succeeds except for Freiermuth because I was really, really excited about his potential that week. Otherwise, I mean, just Hunter Henry last week going for 20 fantasy points, I think is news enough to know that Andrews has to be started. As for your previously asked question, Woody Marks, Troy Franklin, Dobbs, I have no interest in Dobbs. It's between Franklin and Woody. And at the moment, I think as of right now, Woody's the safer play, but I think I end up playing Franklin there. Hunter Henry or Bretton Strange. I prefer Bretton Strange in this circumstance. Thank you. Worth dropping Sean Tucker for Neal? I do believe so, yes. Alfredo says, smart to use my number 4 waiver on the Texans defense. If you're preparing for the fantasy playoffs, I do believe that it is absolutely worth it, especially looking up their matchups and the fact that they've been the number 1 defensive fantasy. I'm surprised that they're available in your league. Thoughts on Ibuka rest of season? Is he worth keeping? Well, it's purely dependent on the availability of Baker Mayfield. Obviously, Teddy Bridgewater as a backup has been efficient in years past. If you guys remember, a couple years ago, he did fill in for Tua Tagovailoa as a starting quarterback of the Miami Dolphins. In those weeks, he was still able to theoretically make a player like Tyreek Hill still fantasy relevant. So I don't believe that Teddy Bridgewater is the greatest potential downgrade in this circumstance. I do realize that there is, kind of hesitation in the potential of what he could provide. But when we go back to 2022, in weeks 4 and 6, okay, so let's go back to week 6 of 2022 specifically. If we go back to week 6, I believe Tyreek Hill there. Tyreek Hill 2022. That's Taysom Hill. That's not the right Tyreek. T Hill was not the right one. Let's just put up Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill. But I mean, but look, that's like so many years ago. Week 6 against Minnesota, 15 targets, 12 grabs, 177 with Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback. Like, there's still a chance. I'm not giving up on Ibuka just yet. If you were going to potentially move away from him, it's just a matter of what you can get in exchange and whether that is genuinely just worth it. Because Baker's not out for the season, unless you guys have heard something that I haven't. Okay, let me go ahead and address some of these super chat questions real quick. Kaizen says, second defense for stash for the playoff. Details are in the chat. Thanks, man. Says, I'm holding the Texans. Patriots, Steelers, Chiefs, Bills, Bucks, Chargers, or Browns are all on the waivers. Okay, let me look at their upcoming schedules ahead here, and then I'll go ahead and give you an indication as to which direction I'm going to go with here. So if I'm looking at these defenses for rest of season purposes for the fantasy playoffs, let me go ahead and pull that up here. I need to make a little bit of a copy-paste exchange for myself. Okay, so from weeks 15 through 17, looking at the schedules of the teams that you've just gone ahead and mentioned, I want to first and foremost look at the Browns schedule. They take on the Chicago Bears, Buffalo Bills, and Pittsburgh Steelers. Not too interested in any of those games. So for now, I would probably position myself away from the Browns. Then we have the Los Angeles Chargers. So we have Kansas City, Dallas, and Houston. Not interested in that either. Moving on to the next. We have the Buccaneers, who have technically a pretty advantageous schedule against Atlanta, Kirk Cousins, Carolina, and Bryce Young, and Miami and Tua Tagovailoa. So that goes to the top of the conversation. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, as of right now, priority. Then we move on to the Bills, who have to take on, effectively, New England, Cleveland, and Philly. Not interested there. Only am I interested in that middle game against Cleveland, but as a whole, not interested. Then we have Pittsburgh, who has Miami, Detroit, Cleveland. I'm interested in 2 of those 3 games, so they would be the number 2 priority in that circumstance. And then we have the Chiefs, who have Los Angeles, Tennessee, Denver. Not too interested there. Only interested in that middle game against Tennessee. And then you have the Patriots, who have Buffalo in that first fantasy playoff game, which I'm not too interested in that circumstance. And they have Baltimore and then the Jets. So I think ultimately Buccaneers are probably the best sleeper hold potential option there. Again, I think that the Texans defense is by far and away the best. But the next best option of those that are available would be Tampa Bay, theoretically speaking. Unless you want to specifically go after, like, maybe I can just throw this out there. I would probably pick up, if I'm going to hold on to Houston until then, I'd probably pick up New England and prepare them to play against the Jets in week 17 instead of having to play Houston up against the Chargers in week 17. That's the only theoretical pivot that I make there. Otherwise, everything looks good. Thank you, Kaizen. TPD45 says, thoughts on a Ibuka rest season is worth keeping. Yeah, so we already talked about that. Neil Dynasty 39 says, should I drop Ertz or Loveland for Strange? I'd be willing to drop Ertz there until Jaden Daniels gets a return. I don't know if it's, I don't think he's worth holding on to. I'd rather go with Brett and Strange in that circumstance. Ravens defense, a hold for rest of season. I do believe so, but I'm a little bit worried about the upcoming matchup, specifically against against Cincinnati the next 4 weeks here, or the next 3 weeks. They have 2 of the next 3 games is against Cincy, to which maybe we look for a pivoting option this week. Hope you're doing well. Thoughts on Gesicki, worth a pickup? I mentioned it earlier this week in terms of my waiver wire pickups video in regards to the potential of success that he has found in the absence of T. Higgins over the course of his career as a Bengal. Specifically, the stat that I mentioned, and I'll continue to reiterate, over the course of the last 4 games in which we have seen Gesicki play without Higgins, he has averaged 8 targets per game and 12.73 half PPR fantasy points per game. So whenever you're having an opportunity of getting no Higgins this week against Baltimore, I think Gesicki is worth the potential if you are in a very deep league where there is not as much running back depth availably out there. Let's see here. Scrolling back down, it says important detail to the previous questions in the chat. Okay, let me go ahead and let me check this out right now. Thank you, man. So it says can't drop Montgomery for Franklin. Also, can only have a max of 4 wide receivers and 4 running backs. Okay, so that is very much so a vital question. Okay. Would need to drop either Ibuka, McConkey, Sutton, or Pearsall for Franklin. Would you recommend? Okay, so with the previous question, let me just see, is there any worth in picking up Pacheco for any of those RBs? No, I wouldn't. And in Strange, I wouldn't drop anybody for that. So in the case of which we're currently sitting, I do think it's still worth to pick up Franklin. Am I going to, like, I really do like the upcoming fantasy playoff schedule for Ricky Pearsall. If it wasn't for a couple inaccurate passes yesterday, he scores a touchdown and probably comes away with 60 plus yards. If it wasn't for Brock Purdy selling the bag in this circumstances. But looking at Troy Franklin's overall contributions of late, specifically, let me actually pull it up in a full PPR because I believe that's what you play in. Yeah. So Troy Franklin in a full PPR has been, 10 plus, 12 plus fantasy points in 4 of the last 5 games. I just feel like his consistency of play there and the fact that he has had genuinely 10, 8, 10, 9, and 8 targets in the last 5 weeks is enough to where I'd be willing to swap him and Sutton out for one another, genuinely. I feel like he's just kind of become the wide receiver one in that circumstance. Rogo says you skipped my question too. Let me see what you have here, brother. Says drop Shaheed. Oh, no, I answered this earlier. I told you to drop Shaheed and pick up Trey Benson. Thank you, Rogo. Appreciate it. You high on Cleveland's defense? Only in certain circumstances. Again, their defense has been incredible this season, especially as of late. They have been great. So, what is it? 4 of the last 6 games, 9 plus fantasy points. Pretty significant. Hey, Andrew, you're not nervous about Taysom Hill running in touchdowns versus Neal at the goal line? I'm hesitant. No, look, here's the thing. I don't feel like this offense is equipped with the ability to even score touchdowns. So it's just purely you're only ever picking up Neal to be able to get the value between the 20s and the receiving utilization that he'll be given, considering the negative scripts they'll be handling. So for now, no, I'm not worried about Taysom Hill stealing touchdowns because you're not really picking up Neal to score touchdowns. Monangai or Montgomery? I'd rather have Monangai. Okay, let's hear. W. Mike, 1981. Let me go ahead and scroll back to this. W. Mike says, greetings. Standard scoring. Jonathan Taylor is starting. I need one more between Charbonnet, Rodriguez, Tucker, Emmanuel Wilson. Or drop any for Pacheco, Neal, Monangai, and Quorum. Okay, so here's my thought process on the matter. I do believe that Emmanuel Wilson would be your RB2 in the event in which Jacobs was out on Thursday. Otherwise, I would probably lean in the direction of maybe positioning myself to drop Sean Tucker in order to pick up Neal or Monangai. Because I do believe Buck Irving's returning, and I do believe Tucker's value is going to diminish greatly. So I would like to have Neal instead of him, and I would also like to have Monangai instead of him. Either of the two to be able to accomplish that would be a positive for your team rest of season. In the event in which Jacobs is out, Emmanuel Wilson plays. If Jacobs is in, then I would position myself to probably play JT alongside of most likely Neal in this given week. Otherwise, next best option is technically, technically at that point, we've got ourselves a bit of a conundrum of sorts. Primarily because when we look at the overall rankings of where I have Charbonnet and Monangai, they're back-to-back. And in a standard scoring league, I think I'd probably just position myself to most likely play Sharbs. So I go Sharbs there in a standard format because Neal's not going to score the tutty. So JT Sharbs, otherwise JT and Emmanuel Wilson. Thank you. How long have you been here for? About an hour and 6. Okay, I'll be here for a couple more minutes answering questions. I appreciate you guys sending in those supers. Go ahead and answer a couple more questions, then we'll head out again. Let's see here. Chris Bentley says, would you roll with Los Angeles at home versus the Chargers in a bad matchup or stick with Houston versus Indy? I would like to hold Houston, but if I have an opportunity to pivot here, I would. Full PPR, pick one, Marks, Sutton, Pierce, or Pearsall. In a full PPR scoring format, I think I genuinely end up playing Cortland Sutton out of that group. Then Marks is probably my number 2 option there. Let's see here. Flock says, Judkins for JJ, still have Christian McCaffrey, JT, Kamara, RJ, Tetaroa, Pearsall, BTJ, and Michael Wilson. In the event in which you do believe that JJ can flip it around with the new quarterback Brosner, I think, yeah, let's go for it. I think I'm willing to take it off principle. Monangai and Montgomery took care of that. Full PPR, drop Hawkinson for Strange or Waller. I'd pick up Strange because Waller's still injured or still on the IR. Aldo, what's up? Says, thoughts on Mbappe in the what? Sorry, it says that was Mbappe on the thumbnail. Really? Does it look like that? Yeah, I could see it. I could see it. I could see that. All right, Drex, what's up? Says rest of season, half PPR, Justin Jefferson or Travion. That level or RB. Feel like my window to move off of JJ is closing. Should I just hold or look for value before the playoffs start? I would look to try to move him. I don't trust JJ McCarthy, and I don't think JJ McCarthy is going to all of a sudden become a better football player in a week's time. So if you can move it and you can theoretically get a player of the caliber of a Travion or somebody in this mix to where, like, when we're talking about the available RBs that are of that caliber, potentially somebody in that B tier of an ETN, a Kyron, a Chase Brown, somebody of that extent, I'd be willing to go ahead and shoot. I'd even take Travion there. That's fine by me. Holden Mitchell says full PPR. I'm thinking about to drop Addison, Kincaid, or Dart, 4 players below. Who would you prioritize in my full teams in the chat? Neal, Hunt, Vidal, Rodriguez, Franklin, and Dortch. Let me look at your running back depth right now. Full PPR. Look at your team. You have currently Jonathan Taylor, Barkley, Judkins. Okay, so you'd never start Neal, and you may consider starting Hunt here, but ultimately looking at wide receivers, St. Brown, Adams, Flowers, Addison. I think it's probably better to pick up, in terms of prioritization, Troy Franklin here, and I'd probably drop Kincaid in order to accomplish that. And then probably go and try to pick up another tight end. Oh, you already have McBride. Never mind. Yeah, Kincaid's the drop. Technically, Franklin's the pickup. Thank you. Constantino says, I traded Alvin Kamara, Quinshawn, Devontae, and Michael Wilson for Jahmyr Gibbs. The other running backs are Henderson. Yeah, I mean, that's a great trade. You stole that legitimately. Half PPR flex Judkins, BTJ if he plays, or Jawan Jennings. I'd probably just end up rolling with Judkins in this circumstance. Hi, Andrew. Full PPR. I dropped Pollard for Chris Rodriguez. Thanks as always. I would. Again, I don't really feel like Pollard or Spears have lived up to the potential, so I would lean in the direction of Chris Rodriguez there, especially with the upcoming schedule for Tennessee not looking ideal. You didn't answer it. What are we talking about? Montgomery or Monangai? No, I answered it. Monangai. Again, brother, just a reminder. So earlier today, I put out my top 36 running back rankings video. If you want to hear more context as to why, I have Monangai at 32 and Montgomery at 35. Hopefully that can kind of give you a little bit of additional support in regards to why I'm leaning in that direction statistically. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, let's see here. We go back to, what do we have here? Drop all 35 on Neal as my RB4. Also, need a defense, and Houston is available. I wouldn't drop all 35 on Neal. I think legitimately, unless, because considering he's your RB4, I feel like the contributions of what Houston's defense can do for the fantasy playoffs for you, Kamikaze, is such a significance that I think it is worth just going after Houston and just letting somebody else have Neal. Thoughts on Michael Wilson rest of the season, even with Marvin Harrison coming back? I hope that he gets enough opportunity in a pass-heavy offense to where he can be top 36 relevant. Have you commented on the chance of Jaden Reed playing Thursday? So here's the thing. The head coach is an asshole. So that's number one. And that in itself kind of leads me in the direction of just like not knowing what's going to happen. The media asks him, hey, is Jaden Reed going to play Thursday? He said, you'll have to tune in on Thursday to see. It's like, brother, just like, what is that? You're not helping anything. Like, come on. But no, I understand it. It's the competitive advantage. He's never going to give away the information, which I understand. And I respect it. It is what it is. But I would like to know if he's playing too, but I don't know. Full PPR 12-team league. Bo, Dart, JT Hall, Warren, Rico, JSN, St. Brown, Adams, Jawan Johnson, excuse me. We have Pitts, Pearsall, Shaheed. Someone offered Rice, Chase Brown for Jonathan Taylor and Adams. I made playoffs. In this case, somebody offered you Rice and Chase Brown for Jonathan Taylor and Adams. I think I'd rather have Jonathan Taylor and Adams the rest of the way. Thank you. Kaizen says trade Tetaroa for Chase Brown. Details are in the chat. I would make the trade. I don't need to know the details, brother. I mean, ultimately, as long as you have wide receiver depth. Let's see. My RBs are Achane, Cook, Judkins, Hampton. My wide receivers are CeeDee Lamb. Tetaroa, McMillan, Jameson Williams, London. Yeah, I'd make the trade. Give me Chase Brown rest of the season. That works for me. Nathan Salazar sends in a question. Nathan, thank you very much. Nathan, whenever you get a chance, type that in, and then Nathan will be the final question of this evening. I do appreciate y'all coming through, supporting the channel. I'll be back tomorrow with my top 40 wide receiver rankings for week 13. Then subsequently later tonight, or tomorrow night, probably around 6 maybe 30, 7 p.m. PST, maybe the same time as we're conducting today's live stream. I'll be here on the channel answering questions. And then again, I'll be back on Thursday morning starting at 7 a.m. PST with updated rankings, all that kind of jazz. So if you guys want any updates in terms of running back, wide receiver, tight end, quarterback, kicker, defensive rankings, you can check that out. If you guys want those rankings at a full capacity for both half and full PPR, and you want to get those every Thursday and Sunday for the remainder of the season and ask me any and all questions, you can check out the Patreon. There's a link down in the description, in which when you sign up via the 2025 Fantasy Football Champion tier, you have all the access to the available potential benefits when you support the channel in that regard. Otherwise, another way to get my rankings every single Sunday for the remainder of the season is via Betr, by signing up today using code Andrew, making that first time deposit minimum of 10, and making that first time play within a real cash play. Of course, you get a free $10 when using code Andrew, so you can take advantage of that opportunity as long as you are eligible based on your current location in the U.S. Thank you. Nathan Salazar's question is as such. He says, I've got 4 trade offers, full PPR. I send Rice and Williams and get Walker. I send Rice and Williams and Walker for St. Brown, Henderson, Aaron Jones. Next trade, London and Rice for Rice 4 and London for Debo and Jefferson. Brother, Nathan, this is so convolutedly confusing because it's like, I don't even know what's happening. Next trade, London and Rice for Rice, London for, okay, yeah, same. It's the same question. Okay, so it's just different order. Rice and London for Debo and Jefferson. Okay, no. I'd rather have Rice and London over Debo and Jefferson. That's clear in a way. Send Rice, Williams, and Walker for St. Brown, Henderson, and Aaron Jones. If this is Javonte Williams, I'm not interested in the trade. I'd probably just keep what you have. If it's Jamison Williams and you need the RB depth, I'd probably make it. Now, going back to, let me see your other questions here. And then you had Rice and Dowdle for Jefferson and Debo. Not as interested in that either. It's Javonte. Yeah, so in the case of which is Javonte, I don't think I make that trade. I really like Javonte Williams' fantasy playoff schedule. It's like really just primed for him to absolutely go off. Just looking at the upcoming games in which they'll have. Again, they should all not only be shootouts, but when you're taking on Minnesota, who can't stop the run, the LA Chargers, who cannot stop the run, and Washington, who can't stop the run, Javonte's probably going to finish just like at the top of the conversation. Besides already being a top 8 running back in fantasy, he's probably going to finish top 5 because of those last final weeks there. So in the case of that trade, not as interested as well, Nathan, in that case. So just looking at the 3 trades as a whole, not interested in the first one, not interested in the second one, not interested in the third one. You're going to need a lot of significance to really kind of flip me on the 4th trade question in this circumstance. Until that's sent in, let's see here. Hey, Andrew, have a good night. Thank you very much, Charlene. Andrew, have a happy Thanksgiving. Thank you. You too as well. Rice, Dowdle, Jefferson. Might be Juwan. I'm worried about Rice in the playoffs. I'm curious why you're worried about Rice in the playoffs. Because the thing is, I think the Chiefs are probably going to win out to make the NFL playoffs. So while they're going to win out, and they're taking on the Chargers, Tennessee, and Denver, brother, I don't think there's any worry at all. Even in that Denver game, this time around, it'll be in Kansas City. They'll have a huge advantage. I'm not worried about it. All right, guys. That's going to cover for me today. I appreciate y'all coming through, supporting the channel, as you guys typically do. Says, this is the final question of this evening. Says, do you like JT's schedule for the playoffs? I don't. I look at Jonathan Taylor's schedule for the remainder of the season, and I do equate it to potentially incredibly difficult kind of schedule in comparison to other running backs. But the difference is Jonathan Taylor is not a normal running back. Against Seattle, week 15 is worrisome. San Francisco, I can live with. Jacksonville, I can live with. It's just that week 15 matchup that scares me. All right, guys. Happy Thanksgiving. Appreciate it. I'll be back tomorrow with wide receiver rankings, live streaming tomorrow night, and of course, live streaming on Saturday. Outside of that, I appreciate y'all. We're going to go ahead and cue the double helix. Have a great rest of your night. And until tomorrow, until next time, I'll see you guys. Peace.